Imagine you're driving at 150 miles per hour toward a parking spot the size of a tennis court. Now imagine that parking spot is moving, rocking side to side and moving up and down. Oh, and if you mess this up, you're either going into the ocean or crashing into a multi-million-dollar fighter jet. Welcome to a Tuesday afternoon. For a naval aviator, landing a jet on an aircraft carrier is one of the most dangerous jobs in all of aviation. So how do they pull off what seems absolutely impossible? Stay with me because this stuff is straight out of a movie. Let's start with the basics. Picture the runway at your local airport. Nice and long, stretching out for thousands of feet, completely still, firmly planted on solid ground. Now, picture the exact opposite of that. That's an aircraft carrier flight deck. A normal runway gives pilots over 2,000 feet, sometimes up to 10,000 feet of stationary landing to work with. But the flight deck on an aircraft carrier? About 500 feet total, and only 300 feet of that is actually usable for landing. To make things even more exciting, that tiny strip of deck is constantly moving with the ocean waves. Think about that for a second. You're trying to land a 60,000-pound fighter jet on a small target that won't stay still. The deck is moving in 3 dimensions at once. And here's the kicker. You're not gliding in gently for a smooth touchdown. You're slamming onto that deck at over 150 miles per hour. This isn't a landing in the traditional sense. It's a controlled crash that happens to work out most of the time, but not all the time. The margin for error is thin. Come in too high, and you miss the wires and have to go around again. That's called a bolter, and it's embarrassing, but survivable. Come in too low, and you slam into the back of the carrier, which they call the ramp. And unfortunately, that's not survivable. Come in off-center, and you might smash into another aircraft or go skidding off the side into the ocean. And we haven't even talked about doing this at night yet, but we'll get there. So how do pilots stop an extremely fast jet on a deck the size of a Walmart parking lot? The answer is the tailhook and arresting wire system. You see, every carrier-based aircraft has a tail hook, which is literally a big metal hook that extends from the tail of the plane. When the pilot comes in for landing, that hook has to catch one of 4 steel cables stretched across the deck. These arresting wires are woven from high-tensile steel wire designed to stop one of the most powerful forces in modern aviation. Here's how it works. Those 4 cables are spaced about 50 feet apart across the landing area. They're connected on both ends to massive hydraulic cylinders sitting below deck. When a tail hook snags a wire, that wire gets pulled out, and the hydraulic system absorbs all that kinetic energy. The numbers are mind-blowing. The arresting wire system can stop a 54,000-pound aircraft traveling at 150 miles per hour in just 2 seconds, using only 315 feet of deck space. Pilots experience deceleration forces that push them forward so hard they feel like they're going through the instrument panel. Now, here's where it gets interesting. There are 4 wires, but pilots aren't trying to catch just any wire. They're aiming for the 3rd wire. Always the 3rd wire. Why? Because the first wire is too close to the edge of the deck, or the ramp, as pilots call it. If you're coming in low enough to catch the first wire, you're dangerously close to smashing into the back of the ship. That's a quick way to crash a fighter jet. The 4th wire is at the far end, and if you're aiming for that, you might overshoot the deck entirely. The 2nd wire is acceptable, sure, but it's not the target. The 3rd wire is the sweet spot. It's in the middle of the landing area, giving pilots the best margin for error on both sides. And if you want to move up the ranks as a naval aviator, you better be catching that 3rd wire consistently. But catching the wire is only half the battle. What happens in the split second after the hook grabs the cable is where things get really wild. Here's something that makes absolutely no sense until you understand the stakes. The instant a pilot's wheels touch the deck, they slam the throttle to full power. Wait, what? You're trying to stop and you're firing up the engines? That's like slamming on the gas and the brake at the same time. It sounds insane, but it's also absolutely necessary. Here's why. When that tail hook hits the deck, the pilot doesn't know if it's going to catch a wire. There's a very real possibility that the hook will bounce over all 4 cables, or that it'll catch a wire and then slip off. If that happens, the pilot just became a missile headed straight for all the aircraft parked at the far end of the deck. And these aircraft are worth tens of millions of dollars each, not to mention the personnel around them, so the instant those wheels touch down, the pilot goes to full throttle. If the hook catches and holds, the arresting wire will stop the plane despite the engines going at maximum power. The aircraft will lurch to a violent stop, and the pilot will immediately throttle back. But if the hook doesn't catch a hook, that is, if it's a bolter, those engines are already at full power, which means the plane can take off again immediately. This is where the genius of carrier design comes in. The landing area is angled at 14 degrees to the rest of the ship, so when a bolter happens, the pilot isn't flying straight into the pack of aircraft parked ahead. They're flying off the angled deck, back into open air, where they can circle around and try again. Picture the chaos of this moment. You're screaming in at 150 miles per hour. You slam down onto a moving deck, your whole body gets thrown forward as the arresting wire catches, and your engines are roaring at full power, fighting against the cable trying to stop you. Once the plane stops, and I mean stops, going from highway speed to zero, the pilot throttles back and the deck crew rushes out. They release the arresting wire from the tailhook, and immediately the plane gets chained down to the deck. You can't just leave multi-ton aircraft sitting around on a ship that's constantly rocking. Every inactive plane is secured with heavy chains to keep it from sliding around. Now, you might be thinking this all sounds hard enough during the day, but naval aviators don't get to choose when missions happen. Sometimes you're landing at night, in bad weather, when you can't see anything. So what happens at night? You see, landing on a carrier requires help. Even the best pilots in the world can't do this alone. That's where the landing signal officers, or LSOs, come into play. These are experienced pilots stationed on the deck whose entire job is to help guide planes in for landing. They're watching every aircraft approach through binoculars, communicating constantly over the radio, ready to make corrections or wave off a pilot if the approach looks wrong. They'll give instructions like, "You're high and right, come down, come left, too slow, add power, wave off, wave off, wave off." The LSOs are watching for dozens of factors: the plane's altitude, speed, angle of attack, line up with the deck, and sink rate. They're calculating in real time whether this jet is going to make it or whether it needs to go around for another try. But the LSOs aren't the only guidance system. There's also the lens, or the Fresnel lens, optical landing system, but everyone just calls it the Meatball. Here's how it works. Mounted on the deck is a gyroscopically stabilized platform with a series of lights and Fresnel lenses. These lenses focus light into narrow beams directed up into the sky at various angles. As the pilot approaches, they see different colored lights depending on their angle. If you're on the perfect glide path, that magic path that'll bring you in to catch the third wire, you see an amber light on the Meatball perfectly lined up with a horizontal row of green lights. The Meatball in the middle of the greens means you're on target. Keep it there. Don't let it move. If the amber Meatball appears above the green lights, you're coming in too high. You need to descend. If it appears below the greens, you're too low. Add power, climb up. And if you see red lights, you're way too low. Pull up immediately or you're going to crash. Pilots are constantly making tiny adjustments based on what they see in the lens. Meanwhile, the Carrier Air Traffic Control Center below deck is managing the whole circus. Multiple planes are circling the carrier in a huge oval pattern called the stack, each one waiting their turn to land. The control center decides the landing order based on fuel levels. If someone's about to run out of gas, they get priority. When it's your turn, you break out of the stack and head for the stern of the ship, beginning your descent. So you've got the LSOs talking in your ear, you're watching the Meatball, you're monitoring your instruments, you're feeling how the plane responds, and you're making constant corrections for wind, the deck movement, and your own speed and altitude. That's the work these guys do. And mind you, landing takes only about 2 seconds. This skill takes years of training, thousands of practice runs, and the kind of mental toughness that most people simply don't have. The path to becoming a naval aviator is grueling. We're talking years of flight school, countless hours in simulators, hundreds of practice landings on dry ground runways, and then, when you're finally ready, your first attempt at the real thing. That first carrier landing is called hitting the boat, and it's a moment every naval aviator remembers for the rest of their life. Before you ever get near a carrier, you practice on land-based runways painted to simulate the carrier deck. You practice the approach angle, the speed, the hook and wire system, everything. But there's one big difference. The runway isn't moving. Then comes the day when you fly out to an actual carrier for the first time. You can see it in the distance. You enter the stack with the other aircraft. And when it's your turn, you break away and line up for your approach. Everything you've trained for comes down to the next 30 seconds. You see the deck ahead, you pick up the Meatball, You hear the LSO's voice in your headset and you start making your corrections. Wheels hit, engines to full power, the hook catches, and wham, you go from 150 miles per hour to 0 in a heartbeat. Your body slams forward against your harness. The jet shudders and groans. And then, silence. But one landing doesn't make you qualified. To be truly proficient, pilots need hundreds of successful traps. They need to be able to do this in rough seas, in high winds, in rain, and yes, at night, when they can barely see the deck and they're relying almost entirely on instruments and the Meatball. Night carrier landings are widely considered one of the most dangerous routine operations in all of military aviation. You're flying toward a nearly invisible deck in total darkness. The ocean below is black. The sky above is black. Everything is black except for a few lights on the ship and that precious Meatball. Pilots describe it as flying into a void and hoping the void has a runway at the end of it. The training never really stops. Even experienced carrier pilots continuously drill the procedure over and over until it becomes muscle memory. Because when things go wrong, you need to react instantly without thinking. And things do go wrong. Sometimes the arresting wire breaks under the stress, and the plane has to immediately take off again. Sometimes hydraulic systems fail. Sometimes the hook bounces over all 4 wires, and you're boltering whether you like it or not. Sometimes weather rolls in. The deck starts pitching harder than usual, and what was already difficult becomes nearly impossible. Flight deck crews train for emergencies too. They've got fire trucks standing by, foam systems ready to deploy, safety nets around the edges of the deck to catch anyone who gets blown overboard by jet wash. Personnel wear heavy-duty helmets called cranials to protect their heads and ears from the deafening noise. They also wear float coats, which are self-inflating life jackets with distress lights that activate when they hit water, because getting blown off the deck by a jet engine is a real possibility. So the next time you're on a commercial flight, smoothly touching down on a 2-mile-long runway on solid ground, think about the naval aviators out there doing the exact opposite. It's one of the most dangerous things humans do on a regular basis, and the people who do it make it look almost routine. So have you learned something new? Let us know what you'd like us to cover next on our channel.